Joshua Green from over at Democracy Now! Claimed that Steve Bannon's experience with video games gave rise to the alt-right. If you're not familiar with Democracy Now!, they are an NPR news program, so they are incredibly liberally biased, if that isn't already immediately obvious. A short excerpt from the article reads, "You know, another story in the book, another thing I got asked about a lot as a political reporter was, where did this idea of the alt-right come from? Who are these people? How did they infect our politics in the way that they had?" And Bannon, oddly enough, is a critical figure in the rise of the alt-right, many of whose members, I should just add as a side note, read and admire Julius Evola and his thinking. But back in 2007, after Bannon had done Hollywood and filmmaking, he wound up for about a year and a half as the CEO for a video game company in Hong Kong, which did not actually make video games that you play. It pioneered something called gold farming, which I had never heard of. But what gold farming is the process of going into these massive multiplayer games like World of Warcraft and winning armors and prizes and gold, which allow you to advance in the game, but then turning around and selling them to people in the real world. So Bannon's company would hire teams of low-wage Chinese workers to play these games in 24-hour rotating cycles, win all this stuff, and then sell it to the wealthier gamers online, which was considered a serious enough business that Goldman Sachs actually invested money in Bannon's company. But what happened was the gamers, most of the people who played the games, considered this cheating, and they got very angry. You know, kids who would spend hours and weeks and months absorbed in these games, they didn't like the fact that there was this shortcut. And so the gamers themselves organized on message boards. There are special message boards devoted to these multiplayer games, and they organized and said, hey, we're going to put pressure on those video games and make them shut down the practice of gold farming. And they did. And it bankrupted Bannon's business. The first thing I'd like to mention is how the title of the article from the Democracy Now! Page made it seem as though Steve Bannon had some sort of insider influence on the gaming industry. However, he just was the CEO of a company that gold farmed. I have to admit, though, this was the first that I read about any of this. It was pretty interesting to me. I had never heard about Steve Bannon working in the World of Warcraft business, and the fact that he was able to work for a company like that and gain attention from someone like Goldman Sachs is pretty impressive, to say the least. In the article, they make it sound like Steve Bannon and Breitbart helped pave the way for the right wing, which to a certain extent is true, but to the extent that they're arguing it is not true at all. People in the modern conservative movement are really a result of radical liberalism that has gotten so out of hand that, hell, you can just look on YouTube for any of the many, many examples of social justice warriors having meltdowns. It's an entire genre of videos. That's how prevalent it is. Insane identity politics is the main reason why everything is the way it is today. It is quite easy to be a heavily left-leaning person and create a boogeyman, so to speak. Remember the week and a half or 2 weeks where everyone said Steve Bannon is really pulling the strings, he's the real president? Does anyone else remember that? It was everywhere. As soon as Trump sent out a tweet, everyone forgot about Steve Bannon. And I'm not sure what to think about him personally, but it was pretty interesting learning about his affiliation with World of Warcraft gold farming. At this point, these people are just grasping at straws. They don't have any leads. They don't have anything to really believe in other than that they hate Trump and anyone who's associated with him. Right now, there is such a disconnect between a lot of more central liberals and the people that represent them. The liberals have a bit of a unique opportunity in front of them. They have an opportunity to finally establish what it is they want to stand for, create a new party of their own. We need to essentially ditch these radicals on both the left and the right. but especially these ones on the left that are saying that they speak for everybody when they only speak for themselves. So that's really all I got for this one. But I wanted to mention this whole thing with Steve Bannon and with Democracy Now! Because they obviously didn't do too much research if they really believe that Steve Bannon and his experience farming gold, or running a company farming gold in World of Warcraft, is what gave him special insight on establishing the alt-right. That is just some groundbreaking journalism from Democracy Now!